Hello, you're watching Big Fat Positive. I'm Emma.
And I'm Gabby, and we're two IVF mums feeling our way through parenting after infertility.
So we're here today to talk about mental health after giving birth.
We're going to talk about maternal mental health, which is something that we have both had experiences with.
Yes, but before we share our experiences, we've got some facts.
Yeah, hit me.
Okay, I'm going to hit you. I'm going to read it off my laptop, which is just here. According to the NHS, postnatal depression is a type of depression that many parents experience after having a baby. It's a common problem affecting more than 1 in every 10 women within a year of giving birth, but it can also affect fathers and partners.
Yep, definitely. And so that's postnatal depression. But according to Tommy's, up to 1 in 5 women develop mental health problems during pregnancy in the first year after childbirth. So that's 1 in 5, because that includes low mood, anxiety, and depression. So there's a whole range, and it becomes more common when you include the other things like anxiety.
There's also postpartum psychosis, isn't there? Which is a whole different thing, which Louis Theroux made a really good documentary about.
Yes, which I haven't been able to watch.
Oh, it's really good. Another fact, many women feel a bit down, tearful or anxious in the week after giving birth, which is often called the baby blues. It's so common that it's considered completely normal. The baby blues don't last for more than 2 weeks after giving birth. If your symptoms last longer or start later, you could have postnatal depression or anxiety.
Right, well, we'll talk more about that in a minute, because I have very strong feelings about that fact there. So we are obviously both IVF mums, and so that we've found out that there are a higher instance of these illnesses in people who've had fertility treatments. So according to scientists at the University of Melbourne, suggests that a history of difficulties with conceptions makes women 4 times more likely to suffer depression after becoming a mother, compared with women who conceive naturally.
I was kind of reading up on why that is, because I do think that as people who've gone through infertility, we've projected an awful lot about like what motherhood is going to be like. And we've also spent a lot of time listening to people who moan about having kids, being like, I will never moan about having kids. Motherhood's just going to be wonderful to me.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to savour every second.
Yeah, and then you hit motherhood and you're like, oh, right. Oh, it's not easy.
Yeah. I think that's probably a big part of it. I think the other big part of it is just the sheer amount of hormones that often, depending on what treatment you've had, but for me anyway, the amount of hormones that you have is huge.
Yeah.
So that's bound to play a big role in the higher instance of postnatal depression, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think as people who've gone through infertility, we kind of spend an awful lot of time planning. Like, you know, I always had a joke that my kid was going to have some crazy name because I'd had like 4 years to think of a name for it.
Yeah.
And some of the baby names we came up with, like, let's just say it's a good job we didn't have a boy. Because that kid...
Oh, I liked that name. Right, okay. Shall we share our own experiences in this department?
So I guess I had 2 like very big mental health moments during my motherhood journey. The first one was in the kind of the early weeks, maybe I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was around 8 weeks after I'd had the baby. And I remember, like, when I first gave birth, my mum said to me, you're going to have 8 to 10 weeks of hell. And my best friend said to me, you're going to have 100 days of hell. And then after that, it's going to get better. I promise it gets better. And I like on a practical level, I knew that, but on an emotional level, it was incredibly hard. And there was one night where I was looking after Noah. I had fed her. She was beginning to pull away when I was feeding her, which was really difficult. We later found out it was a cow's milk protein allergy. It was literally feeding was causing her pain. And she was just screaming. John was in bed. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And I just caved and I phoned my mum. And my mum answered like almost straight away. And I was like, I can't do this. I'm going to go mad. I haven't had sleep in like weeks. I don't know what to do. I'm a failure as a mother. And my mum was like, I'm coming. And she got in the car. She lived like an hour away, or was an hour away. And she came and she took the baby off me, and I just collapsed. And I was like, I'm a terrible mother. Like I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. And she said to me, like, Emma, you are completely isolated compared to what generations before us used to experience. You are, back in the day, we used to have our mums around us. We used to have our sisters. We used to have our neighbours. We used to know them all. They would all take turns looking after the baby. These days, we're just by ourselves. And I live in a part of West London that's not very friendly. I didn't know a lot of people around me. I'd just kind of begun getting to know my NCT friends, but no one was going to come in and just take the baby like they would have 50 years ago when we all lived in Call the Midwife.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Because NCT bodies are really great and now going through the same thing at the same time. But they're not going to come round to your house and help you at 2 in the morning.
Because they're barely looking after their own kids.
Exactly.
We're all going through the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
So you can kind of text them and be like, it's 3 a.m, my baby won't stop screaming. And they'll be like, oh, same. But we're all in our own private hell at that point.
Yeah.
So and that really changed my experience of it, because I was like, oh, you're so right. Like, I'm not a failure. I'm not designed to do this by myself.
And it's really hard.
It's really hard.
Really, really hard.
Yeah. And then my second like major mental health moment was actually a lot later. She was about 4.5 months. And we'll do another video about this soon, but Noah had been taken into hospital, and the cow's milk protein allergy got so bad that she just stopped feeding. So the decision was taken to put her on a feeding tube. Eventually, we tried using my pumped milk, but there was just too much dairy in it. It was causing her to vomit constantly and just scream in pain every time we fed her, which was not very nice. So the decision was taken to put her on a formula, and I was having to pump 8 times a day. Obviously, you have to pump 8 times a day and do a 45-minute tube feed 8 times a day. The pumping was coming second, to be honest. And it got to a point where I was only pumping like 2 times a day. At the same time, because of the way the tubes was inserted, Noah was really objecting to being held, specifically like cuddled. So you could pick her up and she was fine with that and kind of walk around, but she was not happy if you sat down and cuddled her. I think she just felt like it felt a bit claustrophobic to her. So I basically felt really like I was losing my bond with her, like really. And the health visitor came over just after she was discharged and was like, "How are you?" And I was like, and just cried and was like, I'm losing my bond with her. I don't feel close to her anymore. This is awful. So 2 things happened after that. One, I started dancing with her. I started just putting like music on and dancing like an idiot around the room. And she just started smiling every time we danced. And the more we danced, the closer to her I felt. And I am not a good dancer. The other thing that happened was that the health visitor referred me to a perinatal support health visitor who came and talked to me. And she referred me to a lady who came round and taught me how to do baby massage. And it was really nice. It was like an hour a week. She would just come to my house and we'd have a cup of tea and sit on the floor and massage Noah. And she had like a creepy doll that she massaged that didn't have any eyelashes. It's quite creepy. But Noah loved it. It helped Noah to kind of learn how to be touched again. And it made me feel closer. And it was like an excuse to just chat to the health visitor about what we were doing and, was I parenting right? And she was just like, look, she is thriving, all things considered. She's doing so well. You're doing so well. And by the time I got referred to her, I was kind of gradually building up my breastfeeds again. So I was feeling pretty good about that. But she was able to supervise me breastfeeding, which was also really helpful. And yeah, the whole thing, just having that level of support was really, really helpful to me.
I think there's something very unique about the way that feeding issues can affect you as a mother, because obviously you're nourishing your child with your own breasts, and for them to struggle with that or to be in pain with that, that's going to have a really huge impact on your mental
health. And I think
health.
when you struggle to conceive, I mean, somebody was saying this on Instagram the other day, like when you struggle to conceive, it's kind of, I think it makes it even harder if you can't for some reason breastfeed. And there's so many reasons why you wouldn't be able to breastfeed, and so many people, you know, even choose not to, and that's cool. But if something that you're trying to do you're failing at, it's a horrible feeling.
Yeah, it's another way your body's letting you down.
Exactly.
After, after your treatments and stuff. Yeah.
So, but what about you, Gabs? Like, I know that you've been through the ringer.
Yeah. So I definitely I suffered quite a bit, I think, but I find postnatal depression doesn't really fit the how I was feeling and what I was going through. I think it was more postnatal anxiety.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't depressed, I wasn't low, I wasn't struggling to bond with my baby. I was just cripplingly anxious all the time, and I would just like look at him and sometimes and just start crying because he was, you know, I just felt like I was failing him as a mother. I just, you know, I looked at this perfect little creature that had come into my world, and I just thought, I can't be good enough for you. And
he is quite perfect, to be fair.
It's pretty perfect. And that's crying probably at least once a day, I'd say, for about 8 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember looking up the NHS, being like, how long does baby blues last? When does baby blues become postnatal depression / anxiety? Like, when do I have a problem? And it's really hard because 2 weeks isn't a long time. And I know a lot of mothers who were crying long past the 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so I think
I was. Definitely.
Yeah, I think when you read that fact on the NHS website, it then has another impact on you. You think, oh God, I'm the only weirdo in the world that's still crying 4 weeks in, 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in. It can really, it makes it even worse. But I cried at least once a day, and I also had a weird thing. My son was born in December, so it was winter. So I had this weird thing about him being out in the dark. So like it would like at 4 o'clock it would start to get dark, and I would be, if I was out and about, I would not want to be out and about with him. I wanted to get home immediately. And also I started to feel these huge feelings of dread when it got to 4 p.m. I'd start to like my chest would start to tighten, and because I knew the night was coming, and I was so scared of the night, and just this horrible cloud would just descend over me, and I could really struggle to shake it.
Mate, that's horrible.
Yeah, it was pretty crap.
Would you say that you've always, that like this was in the anxiety side of it was like new to you, or is it kind of something that you've experienced before?
So I would have said it was completely new to me. I was like, no, I'm quite a level-headed person. Like, I don't suffer like this in any way. And my husband reminded me that when I was often at work, I would have a panic attack, or I'd start crying, or, I would ring him sometimes in the loos at work, being like, I can't do this. So I think actually, on balance, anxiety might be an issue of mine that I have. So I guess it's not surprising that, when you have a baby, which is a huge culture shock, that things like that are going to happen.
We put pressure on ourselves as well. And I think we put pressure on ourselves that we didn't used to.
We do, definitely.
That our mums didn't as well, you know?
There's too much out there to read to make you feel like what you're doing is wrong. Like, oh, the baby now sleeps from this time to this time.
Oh, yeah.
You need to do this, blah, blah, blah. And it all just adds up. Like, I became also obsessed with, because someone kept telling me that I should have my baby on a routine from day one. But I didn't want to do that. Loads of people were telling me, don't do a routine from day one.
Yeah.
But this one little voice in my head was like, I'm failing my baby by not giving him a routine from day one. So I became obsessed with like routines, and I think that's a killer as well.
Yeah, it really, and I think the routine thing, I remember as I left hospital after I'd given birth, the midwife was like, look, you're going to be fine, just listen to your instinct. And I was like, what instinct? I don't have an instinct. This is an IVF baby. Did you not know? Like, I can't even conceive. Why do you think I've got an instinct? And then slowly the instincts start to creep in, and things like, you know that your baby shouldn't be on a routine from day one. You know that. But because somebody's told you, you're like, oh my God, I'm wrong. That person's right. They've had kids before, so they must be right.
Yeah. I didn't know that was the problem. I think that was, I struggled with the instinct thing, because I just didn't have, it didn't feel like that was there for me. And you know, when they go, oh, you read the book and it's like, well, you'll start to learn your baby's cries and you'll know what your baby wants from you.
Oh, I still don't know that.
To this day, I don't know what is a hungry cry, what is a pain. Well, I'm getting there with like tired cries. I'm starting to learn, and like if he's in pain,
I know the pain
a very
cry.
new noise. But I think because they're older now, they do have a bigger range of cries. Whereas when they're newborns, like, I just had no idea. And that, again, made me feel like I was a failure. You know, I suppose if anyone's listening to this and they're like, I don't have an instinct, it'll kick in.
Yeah.
But don't kick yourself if you don't have that. Because no one knows what's right. You're doing something completely new. Like, you don't just know. It's not like this thing in your brain goes, oh, yes, that's correct. Oh, that's what I should do. Yeah. It's not like a voice that's like,
Yeah. I think
all that chat about instinct.
When you need it most, doesn't it?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. So what have I learned about maternal mental health? So I think that despite the fact that it says baby blues goes away after 2 weeks, I know a lot of people, myself included, who were crying for a lot longer than that. Secondly, nobody's going to try and take your baby away from you. Like I had an absolute full-on breakdown in front of my mental health visitor every time I saw her, and never once did she suggest that someone was going to take my baby away. She did suggest some extra support, which is great. And that's the third thing, is to, if you know, I didn't get any extra support, and I kind of wish I had. So I think if you're feeling that way, then there is a whole range of support out there that you can go for. So take it.
The first thing that I've learned is this too shall pass. It's a hideous cliche. It's written on t-shirts, but I really, really felt like that advice that my mum gave me, 8 to 10 weeks, or my best friend, 100 days. For me, the difficulties had mainly passed by then. So, if we were to ever try again, I definitely would keep that in mind. The second thing is, I wasn't alone in experiencing these feelings. Like, I really, really felt isolated, but thinking about it now, like, generations of women have done this. And I was living in a very isolated position, and calling my mum for help was not a bad idea. It was a good idea. And, she's great because she was there like a shot. But, it just, I wasn't by myself. And even thinking about that comforted me. Like, I wasn't the only person to go through this. And the last thing is that infertility frames everything we do. And I'm comfortable with that now. But that feeling of my body is letting me down again, it's very hard to come to terms with. And, I think for me, keeping in mind that the infertility is affecting everything that I do was helpful.
Well, guys, that's the end of this episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
If you've got your own maternal mental health experiences to talk about, we'd love to hear about them in the comments.
Absolutely. And you can follow us on Instagram if you're that way inclined. We are at Big Fat Positive Channel.
See you later.
Bye.